Hello, hi, Holiboli. Valeria here, welcome. It's been a while. I've had a couple of quite intense weeks. Nothing bad, I actually got a really nice opportunity. However, with really nice things always comes really hard decisions. So I've been a bit emotionally drained. And that reminds me of something a really witty Lolita icon says in her book, a movie. And it is that snatching happiness takes a lot more courage than enduring unhappiness. I actually had started reading Kamikaze Girls a while before that, and then I reread it again because I read the book every time I feel lost or when I need some guidance, even though Momoko is perhaps the worst guide that could exist. But I really enjoyed the book even more than the movie. Though I would say Isobe's speech in the movie, it's really, really good and I really enjoyed that scene. But besides that, I really prefer the book. I especially enjoy the first chapters of the book before she meets Ichigo because it focuses in her twisted way of seeing the world. So for people who didn't know, this book was written by Nobara Takemoto, who was a really influential person in the Lolita scene on its early stages. He used to write poems about Lolita fashion and then he also made some novels about it, the most popular being Kamikaze Girls. And his view of Lolita has always been a tad extreme. Basically, Momoko is his alter ego. And actually I was quite obsessed with his writings, even though I find them a bit cringy now. Mine is really old and really battered. I think I poured tea on it at some point by mistake. And if you have seen my videos, you know that I had this really intense baby Lita stage. So it's also highlighted. That's really embarrassing. I was really cringy. Hopefully, as the years have passed, I'm less cringy than I was back then. But what we are going to be doing today is read the first chapter of Kamikaze Girls and add some very unrequited comments on my part. Anyway, without further ado, let's start. A true Lolita must nurture a Rococo spirit and live a Rococo lifestyle. First line, and I want to make a comment. I guess he picked Rococo as like the inspiration of Lolita fashion because it matched with Momoko's view of the world, or his view of the world. But Lolita takes inspirations from so many places that I guess you cannot say it is only inspired by Rococo. Anyway, let's continue. Rococo is the name of that supremely elegant and sumptuous era that dominated La France. Oh, I forgot to say, this first chapter has some words in French, so I apologize in advance because I might mispronounce those. And also, English is not actually my first language, so yeah, my apologies in advance. In the later part of the 18th century, in art history terms, Rococo refers to the period that appeared after Baroque, which lasted from around 1715 to 1770 or so, and possessed a state lines and majesty based on Catholic beliefs. And without giving any deep thought whatsoever, started using curve for no other reason than, hey, round is cuter than square. And just because the solemn masculine dynamism of Baroque was sort of oppressive, plus all serious and boring, came up with a decorative style that was fancy, ornate, and feminine. Which sounds very nice, but actually is just terribly frivolous. I don't know if he's saying that feminine stuff is frivolous. Is it? I mean, I guess for a male-dominated society, like all societies, it might have been the case. Oh well. After enjoying its heyday, Rococo derived from rocaille, or misshapen pebble in French. Pardon my going academic on you right off the bat. Bear with me a little longer, you slow-witted readers out there. I love his humor. Was treated as a blot on the history of art due to its complete lack of thought. Should we just pretend it never happened? It's so stupid. Yes, let's ignore it and bury it into oblivion. Consequently, painters of the Rococo period such as Watteau and Boucher are even today considered with greater disdain than they deserve as artists. Just as Rococo is treated in art history as a period everyone would like to forget, Ah, that's so true, isn't it? I didn't study history of art until I went into uni, and I was so excited about that course because I wanted to learn more about Rococo and to make projects about Rococo. And I picked my final project to be about Rococo, but my teacher, oh, she wasn't having it. She hated it. She dragged me through the floor of my presentation, pointing out how oppressed the people of the time were and how this period was just the cataclysm for the French Revolution. So, but I still love the course. I still have the book, which was written by this professor. But yeah, she hated Rococo with a passion. And I remember I even used a scene from the movie that explains Rococo. And I guess it was confusing having this material in Japanese trying to explain what Rococo was. She still passed me, if I recall correctly. But yeah, it was quite interesting to try to bring Rococo to my art history class. Anyway, where were we? Just as Rococo is treated in art history as a period everyone would like to forget, the entire era, its fashions, lifestyle, and everything else, seems to be considered best forgotten by the intelligentsia. Just look at world history textbooks. The sections covering the Rococo period are super compact and never very flattering either. Well, the first person most people mention as the representative character of the Rococo period is Marie Antoinette, who lived in the lap of luxury in Versailles and said, "Let them eat cake," when told her people had no bread, and got denounced for that and turned into a total villain by Hiroshi Kume on news station, earned the wrath of her subjects, and got her head chopped off on the guillotine, when those subjects staged a revolution. Although the truly representative character of Rococo is Madame de Pompadour, who raised herself from a low social standing, insinuated herself into the upper classes with her wit and beauty, and ultimately became the power behind the throne, controlling King Louis XV from the shadows. They say that's true, actually. In fact, it would be no overstatement to say that her personal tastes and interests were synonymous with Rococo culture. So maybe it can't be helped that Rococo tends to be understood as the antithesis of freedom and equality. But even so, I don't care what anybody might say. I am living the Rococo lifestyle. That's quite a bold statement, isn't it? Because you simply can't in this period unless you are like uber rich. Regarding Boucher, who took the Rococo elements that make up the paintings of Watteau, one of the leading Rococo painters, and incorporated them into his works even more lavishly, his contemporary Diderot. I'm not quite sure what this person did. All I know is that he compiled an encyclopedia. So maybe something like a French Kiyosuke Kindaichi. Kindaichi compiled a Japanese dictionary after all. Well, maybe not. Made the following declaration. He is morally decadent, does not understand elegance or know truth, has never seen nature and lacks taste. He also said about Boucher's paintings that they contain only elegance, cloying sweetness, fantastic gallantry, coquetry, facility, change, brilliance, make-up skin tones, and lewdness. So this Diderot person made some terribly contradictory statements. One moment saying Boucher doesn't understand elegance, the next moment saying his paintings are elegant, but regardless, I suppose he basically hated everything that is Rococo. To those who love Rococo, however, his very condemnation of Boucher and of the Rococo culture that he wanted to criticize through his attack on Boucher's paintings reads like praise, praising elegance, sweet emotions, and fantasy more than moral and truth, wallowing in fleeting romance rather than trying to give meaning to life, when who knows what's going to happen to you anyway, ignoring virtue and conventions to cherish only the pleasures you are definitely experiencing now. This is the kokoro of Rococo. A little pun in Japanese if you please. Kokoro means spirit. No matter how much deep thought, hard work, and agonizing effort went into coaxing out some insight, if that insight is boring or not beautiful, it doesn't matter. And even if something is made just for laughs, if you find it pleasing, it has value. I think that's a very nice thing to say. For example, with alternative fashions, a lot of people are going to find them clownish or crazy looking or they're just going to laugh about it. But if you like it, and it's got value to you. Other people's opinions and labor do not figure into your assessment. Choosing things with your own personal sense of, I like this, I don't like that, is the ultimate individualism that sustains the very foundation of Rococo. Rococo, therefore, embodies the spirit of punk rock and anarchism more than any philosophy. Only in Rococo, elegant yet in bad taste, extravagant yet defiant and lawless, can I discover the meaning of life. She's a very interesting 16 years old, isn't she? When a baby is chunked out of the womb, the reason it's crying is that it's angry about being delivered into this hokey world of ours. Eventually, handed the load of making its way through life with great disappointments, the baby thinks, if you are saying I have to live in this crazy world, I've got my own ideas. I won't kick up a big fuss now, because that's just embarrassing, but I will take the liberty of ignoring the rules of living quietly and do whatever the hell I want. And the first time a baby laughs is when it's made up its mind like that. So when you see a baby laughing for the first time, don't be so easily delighted. Look very carefully, and I'm sure you'll see that as it laughs, the baby's eyes are emitting a piercing gleam. Most people, however, forget that decision of a time when they grow up, and before they know it, they are following all the rules and conventions they vow to ignore. But there exists a small minority of people who do not forget the vow they made when they first laughed. And those people, whether they cause their parents grief or are condemned to a lifetime of poverty or anything else, have no choice but to pursue a Rococo lifestyle to the end of their days. Am I a disappointment to my parents? Don't think so. Doing quite well. They do comment on how much I spend on yes, small things that make me happy. They're always saying, you should save and save and save. But to be honest, what am I saving for? Never mind. No, actually do save. Do save your money and invest on your future. I'm very lucky that I'm able to save and also spend on my hobbies. So yeah. Lolita is defined as a type of street fashion known only in Japan. Not anymore. But for me, Lolita goes far beyond fashion and serves as my unwavering absolute personal policy. I think that's okay. Like, when I first started in Lolita, there was this huge concept, of course promoted by Novella and Gothic and Lolita Bible and like, that Lolita was more than clothes, and therefore there were some rules and you had to behave a certain way and yada yada yada. You know, if that aligns with your views of the world, then that's fine and you get to follow it. And what I like about this is that she separates the fashion as just being a street fashion and then also her personal take, which is to take it a bit to the extreme. Of course, there is people who only look at it as pretty dresses and that's fine, you know. Wearing a frilly blouse, a skirt over a huge ruffly petticoat with my waist squeezed into a corset, just in case. Corsets are not mandatory. Some girls do wear them, but yeah, they're not like a mandatory thing you've got to wear. And a totally outlandish headdress is my way of pledging that I have devoted myself to Rococo. If I didn't dress in this totally conspicuous and bizarre way, I'd make friends and be popular with boys. It's what people tell me, and the more they say that, the more it fans the flames of my Lolita passion and stiffens my resolve to be a Lolita through and through. The Rococo period, from what I've gathered reading books and looking at paintings, was outrageous. The heights that we, discriminated against today for being Lolitas, could never reach no matter how hard we tried, were easily attained by the aristocratic ladies of the Rococo era. They would tighten the corsets as far as they could go and make their waists almost impossibly tiny. Don't try that, please. But then would be unable to stay standing for very long. The smallest shock would make it difficult for them to breathe, and they'd faint and have to be carried off. This was even considered attractively ladylike. And this was the kind of ideal that dominated the Rococo period. We're talking about the time when ladies would pile their hair high and higher in elaborate hairstyles, thanks to Marie Antoinette and her hairstylist, and top that off with a huge hat, occupying the servants for hours and hours in the process, only to have their height doubled as a result. I think that idea came out of the illustrations of the times. However, those, as far as I know, were made by critics of the period. Like, critics of how much the nobility was spending in luxuries while the people were hungry. So maybe that's an exaggeration. So that even on their knees, they couldn't get through the doorways of their mansions and would have to miss the very party they'd planned attending on the first place. This rather foolish behavior occurred all the time in the Rococo era, and the aforementioned Diderot probably scoffed at it as ridiculous frippery beyond the bounds of reason. But those who possess the Rococo spirit can only applaud with admiration. Does being reasonable guarantee happiness? True. Even if it does, isn't that happiness achieved only by enduring all kinds of things? Well, if I have to endure anything, I'd rather be unhappy. Because we Rococophiles know there is no greater unhappiness than the simple fact of being born. I sort of agree, don't agree. Like, this word is so crazy that sometimes I think, if I have children, will they hate me for bringing them to this world? This book always makes me think a lot about life. Rococo is also called a wanton age, when elegance was used as an excuse to value pleasure above all else. Ooh, don't say wanton. It sounds so vulgar. It is true, however, that from the vantage point of hardworking people today, the life of a noble lady in the Rococo era seems considerably decadent. An ordinary day for a Rococo lady went according to the following schedule. Generally, you wake up around 11 o'clock in the morning. Oh, lucky. The little puppy you keep in your room starts barking, so you languidly scoop him up onto the bed and, rubbing your eyes, play with him for a while. When you get tired of that, you finally get out of bed, crack open the drapes to see what the weather is like, and then let them fall closed again. Then you ring for your maidservant. As you sit there sipping the tea she brings you, still half in a daze, another maidservant appears. Now that you have two maids there, it's time to get dressed. First, they slip off your negligee and put you in a dressing gown. You do absolutely nothing yourself. That's quite an Evin though. And when they've done that, even though you aren't ill or anything, they each take one of your shoulders and slowly drag you to the makeup chamber. Then they leisurely start making up your face. And when they're finally done with that, you move on to your dressing room and choose what you're going to wear. Then it's time for a meal. After that, all you do until the sun sets is go on walks, play card games, which sounds very ladylike, but we are talking about gambling, folks. Gambling. Ride horses, go boating, and so on. At night, you attend concerts and plays, or amuse yourself with dancing. Of course, you take a meal at some point, spending a lot of time at the table, greedily feasting on large helpings of all kinds of delicious things. Deeper into the night, you do the nasty. For people of the Rococo era, doing the nasty was not shameful, but more like a game, or even a kind of a sport. And then it was time to go to sleep. Certainly, one could call this a decadent, lazy lifestyle. But would you not agree that this is also a truly aesthetic way of life? I mean, isn't that the life of uber rich people though? I mean, you can only wish. All kinds of amusements came into fashion among the people of the Rococo era. And of these, embroidery was quite the rage. For ladies of the nobility, embroidery along with reading had been popular before the Rococo period, as something one could do to occupy oneself when alone. But once into Rococo times, for some reason it enchanted the lords as well. It is said that Rococo was an age where men suddenly became feminized, in dress and other ways too. But even so, it's pretty funny to imagine noble gentlemen of honor with beards spending their few moments away from political and military affairs, bent over an embroidery hoop, meticulously putting in stitches. Hey, Lord Simon, I've mastered the double blanket stitch. Whoa, Lord Sasson, I'm so ham-fisted I can't even get the back stitch right. Bring your embroidery hoop and needles over to my place after the next fox count. Don't forget your chalk either, I teach you. Gee, thanks. Hey, I know. How about forming a sewing circle with a few of the guys? That sounds smashing, but let's keep this secret from the womenfolk. And even if they do find out, no damns allowed, because women aren't serious enough. Oh, and how about in summer we do an intensive workshop? Ah, Rococo, what a silly age it was, but this a fine line between silliness and supreme beauty, no more than a hair's breadth wide. And that's the first chapter. I think that's one of my favorite chapters of Kamikaze Girls, and I think the movie put it on beautifully. Like the Rococo explanation scene is just so memorable and funny and weird. Anyway, enough rambling from today. I actually have an online meetup, so I should have lunch and then log into that. But to let me know what you think of Kamikaze Girls, the book, if you have read it, if you haven't, and which one you prefer the most. And I'll see you on the next one. Ciao!